Welcome to Art Kids, the podcast hosted by three college buddies, Lisa, Reese, and Tracy, where we talk about all things art. In this episode, we're introducing the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by sisters Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Join us as we learn how to create space in our lives and break the stress cycle. Wellness is not a state of mind, but a state of action.
Hi guys.
Hey,
Hello,
how's it going?
homies.
It's going. It's been a week.
Happy July. You guys keeping cool or melting?
The melting.
Cool inside, melty outside.
I've been hiding indoors.
Yeah, it's definitely hot. I try not to keep the AC on too much, but I have it on a lot sometimes.
Well,
Then
it's been super humid too, so it's like even if it's like okay outside, it's still really gross.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, totally. It is pretty humid.
The air's thick.
More.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so today I'm going to talk about a book.
What's up?
So we've been like talking about books that we read, like in our own conversations for a long time. I think we all I read quite often. And the past couple of weeks have been really weird, lots of weird like energy vibes. I've been feeling really anxious and stressed. And so I was like looking through my bookshelf the other day and found a book that I had started reading but had never finished. And I was like, oh, I should probably finish that. Maybe it'll help me. It's this book. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Burnout, burnout, burnout.
Burnout, burnout, burnout. So the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. I have not finished this book. I'm only like halfway through part one. There's three parts, but I thought that we could have a really great conversation around burnout and stress and what we know about it, the like physical, mental, emotional health effects of stress, and some tips and tricks on recognizing your stressors, mitigating your stressors, and also managing with the stress. Because I think a lot of people have, and maybe not everybody, but I think most people think like if something is stressing me out and I just finish it or move away from it or remove it from my life, that like I'm fine and everything's fine and then I feel fine, which is not true because there are stressors and then there are stress, and you have to manage with both separately and in different ways. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Mm.
Woo woo. Um, so to just kind of for anybody who hasn't read this book yet, there may be some spoilers, but I'm gonna try not to like do too much spoiling. I want this to be more of a conversation between the three of us also around how we recognize and manage stress, but then some tips and tricks from the authors. And then once I finish reading it, maybe I'll give a little update and see if there's anything else that I learned finishing the book. So the book, again, the title is Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And they are sisters. They're actually identical twins. And they talk a bit about like this book is some of their personal experience mixed with like science and in fact. But they do talk about how even though they have the same upbringing, they're identical twins, they have different triggers, they handle stress differently. The one sister does talk about how her stress manifested into illness and how she managed that, and that a lot of times people don't realize that how much stress affects us physically with like inflammation, um, like high blood pressure, which wears on our cardiovascular system, all sorts of things. So to kick off this discussion, which I'm gonna state the TLDR, which is too long, didn't read statement. Basically, a really great little summary of the book. But I found this on their website and I really loved it. It said wellness is not a state of mind, but a state of action. It is the freedom to move through the innate cycles and oscillations of being human, from effort to rest and back, from connection to autonomy and back, from adventure to homecoming and back. We have been lied to our whole lives about what wellness should look like, and rejecting that lie, all of those myths about having it all and finally achieving lasting peace is how we create space in our lives for that free action through the cycle of being human. I thought that was really like a really beautiful way to summarize kind of what they're trying to convey through this book of like there's a lot of outside influences on us, a lot of things that like pressure that are put on us, especially in society and culture and family and friends. Um, and really like having the space to look at all of those things and to really know that like the cycle in which you move through and the stressor and the emotions you have, it's like it's all natural and it's okay that you're feeling those things and you don't always have to just say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and try and like deny the fact that something does stress you out, something does make you angry, something, is affecting you. Because it's just going to build up, and then, it can manifest in many of ways in mental health struggles, physical struggles, like I said before. Anyways, um, okay, so I want to start by asking you guys some questions. So this can be a little bit more of a discussion than me just blabbing on about a book I read. But can you share a recent experience where you have felt overwhelmed by stress?
Work. I mean, work is like stressful sometimes and it makes me want to like go to sleep. So like I like kind of take a nap because I work remotely. So it's not like constant work. It's like work and then like downtime. So like I take like a cat nap.
Mhm.
Like I set my timer and I don't know, it makes me feel like a little less stressed out. I
So
don't know.
that's a good answer because actually the follow-up question was, what are your coping strategies? So your coping strategy is napping.
Yeah, I definitely fall asleep. It's like a runaway escape mode thing. It's like, oh my God, I have to go to sleep. I'm done. I can't do this. Yeah.
Sure, shut down.
Yeah, totally.
Button. Lisa, what about you?
For me, I'd say a big part of it is work too. Not so much recently, but at times when I was going into new environments where I really didn't know the skills I needed were newer, or during the years I was bartending, there was a period of time where I was like working all day at the law firm from like 9 until 5, and then an hour later I'd go to bartend, and then I would work from 6 until 4 a.m. Right. So that's like an entire crazy day. And my everything would get shot at that point. Like to be social, I have to like build up my energy. So at that point, like my biggest stressors sometimes happen with like social skills and things like that. So I would say like those are where the stress comes in the most: new work situations and a lot of things around social anxiety.
And did you have like your go-to coping methods while you were either in the situation or like after you had gotten home?
Yep. So for me, I'll rotate through like listening to certain audio that I find is really helpful with that, mixing exercise in and like meditation. Also, not that I never do any of these things consistently, but walking out in nature seems to be really helpful. If I can work that into my schedule a good amount, then that seems to help. But working out in general just seems to help a lot too.
Just some examples of coping strategies. Drinking, binge
Alcohol?
watching TV. Yeah,
Drinking
drinking
alcohol?
alcohol.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
binge TV is definitely one of mine too.
Yeah, like I watch TV sometimes to escape. Yeah, a little
I
bit.
would say that's my go-to. Like when I'm just like done, I just like pick something and then like that's it. That's how I like turn off. Going for a run, walking, physical activity in general. So you can have like good and bad coping strategies. Some of them, I would say, like drinking and probably binge watching TV are pretty temporary, right? Whereas like more physical activity or like doing something, which is better for you physically, but also has like a more long-term um, effects, better effects, healthier effects. Okay. So I want to kind of talk about what the stress cycle is. So I don't think people really think about stress as a cycle and how it's important to complete that cycle for the stress to be alleviated. And a lot of people will argue that stress isn't the problem itself. It's getting stuck in the stress cycle that leads to burnout. So it's just like all of this emotions, all of these hormones and chemicals that like flush your body when you're in these stressful situations. And if you're not taking the right steps to reduce those things in your body or to create a sense of um like that you're safe, your body doesn't ever kind of reset or get rid of it. So it just continues to build up, build up, build up. And like it's a very natural reaction. So modern day, like our stressors are nowhere near what they used to be, hundreds of thousands of years ago. The example, and I've heard this multiple times, is like if you're being chased by a lion, like that is a stressor. So then your body's flooded with adrenaline. You are now in fight or flight mode, which you are probably in flight mode and running, right? So the early human would have like ran back to their village and like yelled for help, and everybody would have helped to slay this lion, and then you'd have like food for your village and you get to feast with your community. And it's like this whole process of like creating this safeness and this space and this connection and ending that cycle to put your body back into this rest mode. Which I think is very hard. Like, you think about your day, and if you are not actively or proactive about physical activity and you're like really stressed, you're not really releasing any of that stuff. Or if you're not creating these rituals to like help you de-stress at the end of the day, it's just sitting with you. And I know, like, personally, like I ruminate on things a lot and I like overanalyze and like have conversations over and over in my head. So I'm just like re-engaging myself in this stress rather than like kind of putting it aside, taking care of my body physically, and then worrying about it again when it actually is an issue or I have to come back to that issue. Like work. Work is always going to be there, right? It's not something you can't get rid of that stressor, but you can manage the stress once you're out of that situation. So I don't know how to make this fun. This is like a pretty heavy topic.
I think
Okay,
it's
it's an
amazing
important
that you,
topic.
I think it's amazing that you think that I'm gonna outrun a lion and that my village is gonna slay the lion. But I feel like that's some really hopeful thinking.
You never know. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm trying to think of like, okay, let's talk about types of stress. So we mentioned a couple work-related stressors, right? Like high workload, long hours, like Lisa was saying, lack of control over work tasks, conflicts with colleagues or supervisors, job insecurity or instability, high expectations and performance pressures. Like all of those can be work-related stressors. There's personal stressors, family relationships, caregiving, financial problems, major life changes, moving. Um, then there's like social stressors, which would be social isolation or loneliness, obligations, maintaining relationships, peer pressure, discrimination, prejudice. Emotional and psychological stressors is like anxiety, worry about the future, negative self-talk, self-criticism, unresolved past trauma or emotional wounds, like the fear of failure or rejection. Then there's environmental stressors, noise pollution, crowded living conditions, poor living conditions, lack of personal space, unpredictable or harsh weather conditions, exposure to toxins and pollutants. Like the list goes on, right? There are so many things that we are exposed to on a daily basis, whether we're aware of it or not, that are putting stress on our bodies. We're just being like technological stressors, which I think are, more recent in the past however many decades, but like overload of information and constantly being connected to people and not being able to like separate ourselves. I think for younger generations, well, I mean, maybe older, but like cyberbullying, I think is a big thing that like the youth experience, and it's just like become part of the culture, which is like, I don't know. How do you avoid that? You can't if you're constantly online. And I feel that there's like this dependence on technology. And so all of these stressors can contribute to this feeling of being stuck in that cycle. And it is the key factor in burnout. And so really the various methods, physical activity, social connection, creative expression, effectively managing and like mitigating these stressors with those things, is really, really important. And being able to like kind of reflect on all of these stressors that are affecting you on a day-to-day basis, and then looking at how you feel, and kind of making the choice to be proactive about trying to break the cycle. So exercise, deep breathing exercises, so meditation, breathing, yoga, those sort of things. So if you're not into like exerting yourself physically, practicing deep breathing exercises like the 4-7-8 technique, it helps to calm the nervous system and to signal to the body to like relax.
What's the 4-7-8 technique?
Okay, so the 4-7-8 technique is when you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7, and then you exhale for 8. It's also very good for trying to get yourself to go to sleep. So if you do that breathing exercise and you're trying to fall asleep, it also like calms you down and regulates your nervous system and helps you sleep. It's really good. There's also like a 5-5-10. So in for 5, hold for 5, out for 10. And I don't know. You should try it, Idris.
Yeah, I do. I have all of these stressors, all of the stressors.
I think we all do. I think out of that entire list that I listed off, you could find at least 5. And you're like,
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
95%
yeah.
of them. 95%.
I didn't even list them all.
That's a lot.
You want to know the big ones?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Time management and deadlines, balancing multiple roles and responsibilities, lack of downtime and rest, and constantly feeling rushed or in a hurry.
Yeah.
Time management is a huge one for me. Very
And
much.
then I still feel stressed out even after I sleep.
Focused.
Right? Yeah, because you still have all of that stress built up in you, and it hasn't like left your body, which is wild. So anyways, emotional and psychological activities, you can do creative expression, laughter, crying. Totally cried on the drive home the other day after a very stressful day because I just couldn't believe how many things went wrong. And Chris and I just laughed so hard, then I started crying. It was great.
That frustrated cry. I get that. Or if you've ever been so angry, you start crying.
It was awesome. But then I felt better. And the next day I was like, you know what? I think that was just it. I just needed to let it out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I find with stress and stuff, like I know societally we're kind of told not to like talk about our feelings a lot or like talk about our stresses. But for me, I found that if I can be like a very well, like I will be moody or kind of intellectualize my emotions and express them through art and writing. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm in trouble. But I think some people see that sometimes and they're like, oh, she's must be a mess right now. And I'm like, no, that's a good sign. If I'm doing this, I'm processing it. Like if I'm holding it in, that's when you need to worry about me. And I think that's the case with most people. It's just that most people don't feel comfortable, but it helps you break through that cycle and release it, I think.
It does. It literally, it is fact that engaging in artistic activities provides an emotional outlet and will help you process stress.
Yeah.
In any form that's like creative to you. Like it could be dancing, it could be music, it could be like drawing, painting, whatever. Um, it is a great way of processing stress.
Yeah.
Another big thing that they focus on is connection, social activity, community, being connected with others, spending time with friends and family, and engaging in meaningful social interaction. So like not like, oh God, I gotta go to this work networking thing that I really don't want to. Like it's you want to be there, you want to be with these people, you have fun, you laugh. Maybe people that you can have physical affection with, hugs, holding hands, cuddling, all those things, those physical affection, it
One night
releases oxytocin.
stands.
What's that?
No. I said one night stands.
I mean, sure. That's a sure. Yeah, why not? It releases oxytocin, right? Which helps reduce stress. Also, talking and sharing your feelings and experiences with people you trust can also help you process stress.
Or
So
complete
yeah, feel free
strangers.
to talk about it.
I mean, talking to complete strangers is really easy sometimes. I don't know why.
Yeah, right. Because it's an unbiased opinion of you, right? So if you meet somebody in a coffee shop or whatever and you get chatting, sometimes you do kind of like talk without a filter that you normally would, maybe because like who are they? No, it's like they're just an unbiased
Nobody.
ear to
I'm gonna say
listen.
everything. You're nobody. You're nothing. I'm gonna tell you everything.
But also beware of trauma dumping. Don't do that.
Yeah,
That's a no-no.
Mm.
We could have a whole nother episode on trauma dumping.
I'm sure that's happening all over the place.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so like meditate, visualization, imagining a peaceful scene or place where you can help calm your mind and reduce your stress. Gratitude practices, adequate sleep, balanced diet, time in nature. Also, setting boundaries and having self-care.
These are things
Um,
I'm not doing.
what's that? All the things are not doing. We're gonna practice. We're gonna pick like one of each category and like every month we're just gonna try and do those things. Um, I have a very hard time saying no and setting boundaries and protecting my time and energy.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of my stress comes from, although I don't like blame other people. I just think it's like I give, 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 and then I forget that like I need time for myself. Um, so definitely making sure you're setting boundaries and prioritizing your self-care, make sure you have time to relax and you're just managing your overall well-being and taking breaks. And you can have like regular breaks while you're doing work or a stressful activity. So it kind of like you, Idris, like taking breaks when you can, then taking a little cat nap. I think that's really helpful to kind of give yourself a break during those stressful times, especially when you're like constantly on call. And then doing things that have purpose and meaning. So engaging in meaningful activities that like align with your values and feel that they give you a sense of purpose can also help reduce stress. And acts of kindness, helping others and performing acts of kindness can boost your mood and reduce stress. So all of these things really important to consider and try and to put into your cycle of being. I don't know, your practices. What would you say? Do
Cycle of
these things.
Your
cycle of
self-care tools.
Put them in your toolkit, your stress toolkit. These are all the things that need to be in your stress toolkit,
Your cycle of being.
your cycle of being.
I love when you talk like that.
Oh man. So it's like this book has really great tips and tricks, really great like lists on how to help identify the stressors that you have in your life. Like going through that list, like I wouldn't have even thought about putting them on my own list, but really like there's a lot of things. The other topic that I wanted to talk about that they talk about in this book is the human giver syndrome. So again, going back to like setting boundaries and making time for self-care and being mindful of where your stressors are, like the human giver syndrome, as they talk about, is like really the societal expectation of mostly women, but I think anybody could probably fall into this, of just this constant expectation to give, and expecting to prioritize the needs of others above their own, including anything like emotional support, physical care, sacrificing your personal goals and desires in relationships, societal pressures, norms of like teaching, young girls that, and maybe I shouldn't say just young girls, but in general, like being brought up in a way that you're only valuable when you're giving, and you're like worth something, and it's wrong to be selfish or to prioritize yourself over others. Um, I think that's something that like a lot of cultures kind of like ingrain in their youth, and when they grow up, a lot of people become people pleasers and they just want to give, give, give. And then they have a really hard time making space for themselves. And like that constant giving without adequate support for yourself really leads to burnout, chronic stress, various mental and physical health issues. And so I think that's something just to be very aware of like, do you fall into that category? I do.
Yeah.
And also just like being aware of other people in your circle. If you see them falling into that, like give them space, be like, hey, maybe you need to not do all of these things for everybody because now you're sacrificing your time, or just like making other people aware that like it's okay to take a break. It's okay to not say yes to everything. Like I mean, obviously if they want to, and it's not putting stress on them, but I think like advocating for other people's well-being as well as yourself is very important. Um, so a couple more questions. Let's see. Back to the book. So a little, well, I guess my last question for you guys would be, what advice would you give somebody who feels constantly stuck in the stress cycle and doesn't know where to start? So if you were trying to advocate for somebody that you saw was having a hard time.
Make a to-do list. Make a to-do list and prioritize what you need to do. And tackle things one at a time, one step at a time. Something Lisa told me recently was like, how do you eat an elephant? Oh God, it's so gross.
One bite at a time. Shout out to Emily for saying that to me recently. Responsible.
It's so ill. But like, yeah, you gotta eat it one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true. I think sometimes we get lost in like the end, like just getting to the end instead of like realizing that we have to get there slow.
How about you, Lisa?
I think for me, I would suggest like figuring out what section of their life they're feeling that stress, right? Whether it be work, emotional, relationship, da, 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 and then trying to notice the patterns and triggers where they come up, and then ways to reframe it, or like to just either complete the cycle or reframe it to set boundaries, things along those lines. I think the biggest part is like we often don't know where it's coming from, and identifying it is a big part. And then like what Tracy was just saying is that like it's not about the destination. I think a big part of reframing our lives is understanding that like it's really the journey. Everything is a journey. And like, I think we're often running through things and waiting to get to something where it's like this is it. This is life now, like making it so that the journey and the process is part of the living, you know? Um, that too.
Yeah. I agree with both of you. And I also utilize that list tactic. I find wait, where's my notepad? I just had it. Oh yeah, right here. I got this little handy dandy notebook. And I sit down every morning. Not that you can see anything. But yeah, I do the same thing. I just like make lists every morning, the things
Oh
I need
wow,
to
every
do.
morning? That's crazy.
I'll
That's a lot
drink
of
my
Awesome.
drink my coffee, make my
yeah,
list.
that's nice.
Um,
That's virtual.
and I try and prioritize in not prioritize, maybe like break them out into like work related things versus like home things or other. Just so I don't look at a list and feel overwhelmed because I think that can happen too. Like when you have a lot of things on your list, it like even just that is like overwhelming and like, ugh, I have so many things I have to do and I have no time, you know. Um, and then realizing that like some things can wait till tomorrow. So like
Yeah,
trying to
totally.
prioritize throughout the day, but like also realizing that you still need to make time for yourself. I think that's one thing that I've been trying to be better at is like not work outside of work hours, which is very hard, especially working from home because you're constantly like you have access to everything. You're like, oh, I'll just do that like after dinner. Or so sticking to my scheduled time for myself to do work. Um, and I think I would recommend that to other people, especially people who work from home consistently, of like having setting those boundaries for yourself with your clients or whoever you're working for and really trying to stick to them because that to me like I feel like it's changed how much I stress about things and also it gives me this like permission to relax at some point. But I do need to work in some physical activity, which I have not been able to do.
Yeah,
Um,
don't we all?
mhm. I had this teacher at one point who had said like she used to suggest doing like making sure you hit mind, body, and spirit, and that like a lot of times when stress builds up or you get kind of off kilter, it's because like we're too focusing on one area. So sometimes when I'm feeling myself get really off, I make a list of like how do I do what activities can I do that it's like body, which is like either activities or almost like practical earthly stuff like pay bills, da da da, and then what falls into spirit and what falls into mind and making sure that I'm like pouring enough energy into all three sections. I think that's like a big part of managing stress too, because if we're like only achieving in one area, then it's like that area is getting too full and everything else is getting depleted.
I like that way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Mhm. I've had like a lot of like urge to like paint and make things,
Hmm.
Do
but
it.
I have not done it
Do
Why?
just because I don't have the space for it right now. It's like a hard thing to like find space for.
it. You're gonna paint a mural in your washroom.
Yeah,
Supplies or something? Do you have the supplies?
I have the supplies. They're just all stored away.
Hmm.
I guess I could just set up outside, although it's been really hot out. Melty, melty. All right. So I guess some takeaways. Well, first, I need to finish the book. Like I said, I'm only halfway through part one. Um, but if anybody wants to read the book with me, then we can have like an actual discussion about the stuff in the book. I do like that they have some like worksheets and activities to help you do some things,
Oh wow.
which is kind of nice. Like, you know, like identifying your stressors, coping strategies. What are the good outcomes of you having that coping strategy? What are the not so good outcomes of having that coping strategy? And then like you reflecting on them as well. And like whether it's something that should be one of your coping strategies or not. So I think that's kind of neat, but also I just think there's a lot of valuable insights into managing stress and preventing burnout for anybody. And so I definitely would recommend picking this book up, checking it out, even if you don't read it all at once. This is my second time revisiting the book. Actually, well, I also bought the audiobook, so maybe I'll just read along. Mhm.
Yeah, like an audiobook. I'm nice and lazy when it comes to reading.
Especially with a good, nice long drive or when I'm on a hike. I love a good audiobook.
Yeah.
Audible.
Totally.
Mhm.
You know, the thing about like the list that, you know, like making a list, like a to-do list is like it's so stress relieving, but at the same time, like it could like also cause stress
Mhm.
and then you like avoid it. And then like also like sometimes it's just like you have to know when to like not do something. Like you were saying, like tomorrow, like put it off to tomorrow. So I almost feel like it's like a series of like lists and like, you know, it's just that action of like, oh, in the morning I'm gonna have coffee and do my to-do list. Like you really stay on top of it. Like I feel like I don't stay on top of my list all the time. Like
Yeah, if
I'll
I
make
do
them
it
into
that
that,
way, yeah, if I've like made a habit of making sure that I do it that way,
Smart.
but it works. But it is like, you know, a little stressful some days when the next day you're looking and you're like, oh crap, I didn't do that. Well, I guess that's first on my list today. You know, it's and it like their stuff is constantly changing. So, oh, Wesley, my dog keeps barking his head on that.
oh, that's daft.
You're daft.
That's our vocabulary word of the week.
Daft.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for listening to me blurb about a book that I haven't finished.
You did really good for reading like 2 seconds of it.
I can't finish a book.
I do sometimes. It just depends on the book, but a lot of them I'll read in segments.
What about you, Idris?
I don't know how to read. I don't know. I feel like if I'm reading, it's like online or something and barely. I don't know. I'll like go to sleep if I have to read.
I do have a recommendation of
Yeah.
a time management project tracker that I started using called Toggle, Toggl.
Toggle.
Probably the best free one I've used so far. It's pretty great.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah.
I'm always
So,
looking for one that'll stick.
Toggle if you'd like to support us and sponsor an episode. I really do like your product. It's cool. Yeah, I don't know. The dashboard's really nice. Everything seems pretty intuitive. There's integrations. The upgrades are kind of sweet, although I'm cheap right now, so I'm not going to upgrade to anything, but it helps with like invoicing and time management. You can look at your schedule, overview of your week. It's nice. It's nice design too. It's pretty sweet. No.
No. Goodbye.
Farewell. How's that song go?
Auf
So
Wiedersehen.
long.
So
Goodbye.
long, farewell. I'll be to say adieu, adieu, adieu to you and you and you. Do, 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 do.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Art Kids. For credits, resources, and information on our guests, visit the Art Kids website at artkidspodcast.com. That's Art Kids with a Z. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all your favorite platforms.